Hey everyone, welcome back to the hardware news recap for the week. In this one, we'll be talking about warranties and our thoughts on them. We'll also be going over, spoiler alert, they're good for consumers. We'll also be going over the Intel A750 benchmarks, where the company has benchmarked its A750 GPU, which isn't out yet. This is the A380, and it tested it in 48 games against NVIDIA's RTX 3060. They are first-party benchmarks, but it's still a lot of them, so we have some numbers to talk about there. The two companies getting feisty now, although NVIDIA's in a pretty comfortable lead at the moment well, I guess Intel's shipped 3 of these. So NVIDIA's got quite a few million units ahead in terms of market share. But it'll be an interesting fight nonetheless. We'll also be going over the X670E motherboard announcements from the last week from AMD's event. Not leaks, not rumors, actual news. There's a lot of it this week, and a few other things. Let's get started. Before that, this video is brought to you by Squarespace. We use Squarespace for our own GN store and juggle complex, multi-piece orders all the time with it. Squarespace makes it fast for us to roll out new products with detailed pages full of galleries, videos, and descriptors. It's also useful for your own resume sites, for photographer or project portfolios, or for starting your new small business idea. There's never been a better time to try and start your new business than right now, and we can vouch that Squarespace makes it easy. Visit squarespace.com/gamersnexus to get 10% off your first purchase with Squarespace. First up, the topic of warranties. There's no way for us to enter this topic without everybody knowing what we're talking about this week, so instead of subtlety, we'll just go with the direct approach here. Friendly competitor of ours, Linus Tech Tips, recently noted that it would not support warranties on its new $250 tech backpack. Reasoning included not wanting surviving family members to have to support the backpack in the event of death of the CEO of LTT, which doesn't make really much sense at all, but it was a live show remark. That's what Linus does. We can kind of get it from that perspective. Going off the cuff, you say some weird things sometimes, and that was one of them. Later tweets, though, got really bizarre because in a sort of wave of defensiveness, they stated things like written warranties that are formalized and legally offer no additional value over just saying we'll take care of it, which we just fundamentally disagree with and very strongly here at GN. Now, the problem here is not that there isn't a warranty or that they don't want to offer a warranty. It's about the communication of it and being clear with the audience as to what's covered when making these great claims. So products can exist without warranties. Warranties aren't magic. You are covered by standard return policies that'll cover things like it arrives and it's missing stuff, it arrives and it's got holes in it, whatever. And then you are also covered by reasonable merchantability. However, the part that we think is important is when you start making these great claims and saying, we'll take care of it, that becomes an implicit warranty that is incredibly vague and nebulous. It's not clear what that means to anybody or for how long it will be taken care of. So as soon as you start making those statements, we think you have to back it up with clear writing just to get everyone on the same page. Hey, this is what we will take care of, and here's for how long. So there's no questions about it. So just as a self-example, our shirts don't have a warranty or an extended warranty. However, they fall under a very clearly stated return policy where if it shows up and it's got a hole in it or a problem with it, then it will be taken care of by that written policy where you can just let us know and send it back, and that's sort of the end of it. It's very clear. So saying we'll take care of it for a $250 marketed as premium product has the potential to accidentally or intentionally by any company become misleading, where it would be better to just simply say, look, we're not really sure what the implications of selling this backpack are yet. We're new to this. We don't 100% know what we're doing yet. So we can't offer a huge warranty, and we'll work towards something as we learn more about this. And what it comes down to is when everyone's direct with each other and clear, but in a polite way, then it's kind of hard to be upset as the customer or as the manufacturer, just because you're all on the same page. So this is one of the things where the reasoning, we can't really shy away from it, despite being friendly with Linus for many years at this point. And Linus himself was recently asked on the WAN show about whether he would be, quote, squeezing Steve out of the technical testing space because of the LTT lab stuff that they're doing. Since we've been testing for our entire careers here, and they're coming in with a lot more money than us in a way that's good for the industry. It's fun competition. So here's what Linus had. His response was the right response, by the way. Here's what he had to say about that question.
Any plans to collab more often with the new equipment?
I think that some friendly competition in the space would also be great. I think that we have the potential to push each other to be better.
So consider this just some friendly competition. We're both big boys now. We can both take a few pokes at each other and push each other along to be better for the industry. So I agree with his comments, and in the same way that they are pushing our technical testing, we are going to be pushing their store efforts, and we're going to be doing that with our warranties today. So we already had a warranty on our mod mats, and we've had that warranty since day one when we launched them in 2017. But now we are upping that warranty on our mod mats, all of them, to 7 years retroactively. And the reason we chose this number is because it covers everybody who has ever bought a mod mat from us. No one's being left out here. And we also chose it because a few months ago, we introduced a 7-year retroactive warranty for our toolkits as well. So it lines up nicely with that. You can head over to store.gamersnexus.net to backorder the next run of mod mats, which will be in very soon. We always sell through each run of mod mats extremely fast, so if you want a high-quality PC building work surface that's verified as anti-static, then go grab ours on the store. It protects your table and your components from damage as you build PCs, and it has helpful wiring diagrams like Ethernet RJ45 wiring, PCIe and EPS 12-volt wiring, and more. And it has a grid for screw tracking, disassembly of products that we use all the time. So let me tell you just how competitive we're being with this warranty. In addition to the usual coverage of manufacturing defects, material or workmanship issues, things that are on the manufacturing side, not on the user side, we also are offering some coverage of accidental damage. It depends on what part of the product it is, but we do have coverage, for example, of the studs and the snaps. So that would be this piece down here. There's 2 of them on this particular mod mat, or the common ground point, which has another one inset into it, where accidental damage that affects the functionality of it will be covered. So, for example, if you drop a rock on the stud or the snap, like down here in the corner, and you bend it to a point where it no longer functions and can connect with the common ground point, even though that's your fault, you can email us and ask for one. We will ship you a replacement part. You can screw it in and you'll be good to go. The same applies for the wrist strap, for the anti-static wrist strap, that is, for the cable connecting to the wrist strap, and for the common ground point. So if it's damage that you caused accidentally and it affects the functionality of it, just tell us, no big deal, we'll send it to you. Yeah, if you intentionally cut it open, we're not gonna replace it for you. And we will require photos because you can see how this policy could be abused very easily if someone wants to get 2 of a thing. So we'll need a photo showing the damage, but it's really not a big deal if you accidentally hurt something for like a common ground point, a wrist strap, a snap. We'll get it out to you. Now the mod mat is only covered for workmanship defects, manufacturing defects, material defects, things that are our fault. We don't cover it for any cosmetic damage at all because that's the point of the product. We don't cover it for, if you're screwing something in, you slip, you jab the mat and you take a chunk out of it. That's not covered either. That's accidental damage. That's really part of what the product's sold for. Just check out the store page if you want to learn about it. And that details what it is more explicitly. You all have supported us for years with it, and we're in a position where we're able to support it. And that's what the margin's for. The margin isn't all there to just keep it all. Some of it's there to support people when they need it. So for us, it's not just about saying we'll take care of it, but saying we'll take care of it. And also, here's formally in writing what specifically we'll take care of. So it just keeps everyone accountable. It keeps the manufacturers, that's us here, accountable for things that we should be doing right, like making sure the product works within the spec, making sure that the grounding strap and the common ground point stay intact for those 7 years, stuff like that. And it also keeps the customer accountable, where you're saying, look, we're not going to cover it for cosmetic damage that was caused because you were using the product as it was designed. So everyone's very clear on how it works when it's in writing, and that's why we like it. So the amount of backlash towards the $250 unwarranted backpack created a lot of pressure and led to some defensive statements by Linus on Twitter. I've definitely been there. It is hard to be in that position where you have thousands of people yelling at you. I get it, but it doesn't change the fact that we just strongly disagree with the entire stance on it and the sentiment towards it. And realistically, I think the reason this happened is because LTT is investing a lot right now, where they're trying to compete with us on their lab. They're spending a ton of money to compete with a much smaller outfit that's been doing it a long time. And we have over a decade sort of head start in the field that they're going to have to gain in short order. Also, though, they're spending a lot of money on real estate. They're spending a lot of money on staff. They're spending a lot of money on all these products. There's a lot of endeavors going on. There's probably some financial pressure that caused that sort of quick reaction in the live stream. And we've got a team of 5 people with 1 location, and we're very focused on the things we're doing. So I think that's the difference. And for the individual, ultimately, just like we say with NVIDIA, it doesn't really matter what the company's reasoning is for charging X amount or for not offering Y support. What matters is sort of what the customer is expecting there. And if you're making certain statements, then you have to back it up with something in writing too. It's hard to go from YouTube to an entirely different industry. We had to go through it as well, and getting those processes in place takes experience that right now, at least, their team doesn't yet have. They're working on it, and we're still gaining experience too. The difference, I guess, is for us, a good friend of mine I've known for forever runs the warehouse that handles our distribution. It's a different company, but they do the distribution for us. And he also manages a lot of the factory relations for us, and he's been doing this for 17 years now, just as long as I've been doing technical work. I love working with our manufacturing distribution partner, and we get a lot of good stuff done together. So I think that's the real difference. Anyway, enough of that. If you want to check out our warranty, you can go to the store. We have it all listed on the website. There's the toolkit one and the mod mat one. We list what we cover. For the mod mat, we cover a whole lot of stuff. Go to store.gamersaccess.net if you want to help us out directly. And I'll say this before we close out here too. It's just, hey, you said you want a friendly competition, so let's give the people what they want. So that's all this is. Let's go to the next story. All right, first news item from the industry this week, Intel and its A750 benchmarks versus the RTX 3060. So as we said in the intro, it's about 48 games or so they tested in total. 42 of those were DirectX 12, and the remaining 6 were Vulkan. Intel did not provide any benchmarks, at least, well, not in the immediate coverage that they posted that we saw for DirectX 11. We've provided plenty of context for DX11 tests and some of our benchmarks for the A380. And as Intel admitted to firsthand, and as we saw in testing from a third party, it's weak in older APIs. So they do better in DX12 and Vulkan than they do in DX11, DX9, stuff like that. So if you want to play the next Skyrim remake, you might be out of luck for Intel. So anyway, for Intel's benchmarks, the company used a controlled and fully disclosed test bench for both the NVIDIA and Intel GPU benches. It had a 12900K, a Z690 Hero for each system, and the NVIDIA system used an EVGA RTX 3060 XC gaming, while Intel's used its self-branded engineering sample A750. Games were tested at Ultra at 1080p and High at 1440p. Unfortunately, though, the change of settings here makes it difficult to do like-for-like resolution scaling comparisons. Just for reference there, too, we did those comparisons in our A380 review, and it was pretty interesting, the results that came out of the test, where Intel seemed to start to do better or establish more of a gap between itself and, say, AMD, for example, as the resolution increased. Now, because the A380 is so low-end, didn't really matter so much in realizing that gain in a realistic or a practical way, but it was interesting from an academic research way where maybe the A750 can benefit more from that, that we think it's a memory subsystem benefit that Intel has. Maybe the A750 can benefit more than, say, an A380. Anyway, looking at the raw FPS numbers or one-off differences here, Intel is showing anywhere from up to about a 33% lead in Warzone at 1080p and 53% at 1440p there, with the opposite being true also when NVIDIA leads. NVIDIA has plenty of gains of its own that are in the 20 to 30% range. It just really varies heavily from game to game. So we would average the percentage uplift and just tell you what percent on average is Intel or NVIDIA better than the other, but this is such a wide range of numbers. If we just highlight a few of these bigger differences, that it do a disservice to the real story, which is that these two sets of numbers are all over the place, and it makes it difficult to point to one as a definitive winner in just FPS numbers. Now, unfortunately, that works against Intel here a lot, because whenever it's kind of a wishy-washy or hand-wavy balance of results where you look at it and you're like, they kind of lose here and they win here. Whatever that's the situation, the company that has the best external factors like driver support is going to be the one that wins, or price as another example. So in this position, Intel obviously is fighting a losing war with software and drivers, where NVIDIA, for its faults that it has, does actually have an extremely robust driver package for Windows especially, and Intel can't fight there right now. So Intel's trying to stack the A750 versus the 3060. The 3060, for perspective or reminder, had a launch MSRP of $330, so the A750 is aimed to be positioned against that, for whatever that's worth. We don't know the price of the A750 yet. Intel will have to be lower than it, though, to make sense, because Intel can't. Years ago, speaking with NVIDIA, AMD had a competing card coming out. I don't remember which one it was. And our question to NVIDIA was, how do you plan to compete, it was Vega, with the Vega 56 pricing? And the NVIDIA representative's answer was, we don't compete on price, Steve. We compete on quality. And for that particular launch, if you remember the Crimson era, pre-Crimson days especially, they had a point. So Intel here, it has to compete on price, which is fine. Someone has to do it. And it's not going to be quality today, maybe in the future. X670E motherboards shown during the AMD event recently. So AMD had a Meet the Experts event, and there were several AM5 boards shown for the upcoming Zen 4 CPU launch. That's going to be Ryzen 7000 within the next month or so, based on the rumors that are out there right now. And in this event, Asus showed off boards MSI, Gigabyte, and BioStar, who was just happy to be there. Asus showed its ROG Crosshair X670E Extreme, and that's Extreme with an E, not Extreme not with an E, which would be Gigabyte's Extreme, and X670E is also Extreme. So it's the Crosshair X670 Extreme with an E in both extremes. And Hero was the sub-brand for that. So they use 110 amp power stages in this board. It features a 2.5 gigabit per second LAN. It's got toolless M.2 mounting, 12 various USB ports, and a push-button release for the top PCIe slot, which we saw emerge with the Alder Lake boards previously. The Extreme, on top of the 2.5 gigabit per second LAN and the Hero, also has a 10 gigabit per second LAN port and Asus's vertical mounting daughter card for M.2 SSDs. Next up, ASRock gave a quick overview of the X670E Tai Chi Carrera with its marble aesthetic, as well as the regular Tai Chi. And it also showed the Steel Legend, the Pro RS, and Phantom Gaming Lightning boards. The PG Lightning had not been seen before this, and appears to be the lowest end of the X670E options from ASRock and the newest one revealed. After that, Gigabyte covered the X670E Aorus Extreme. That's with an X, not with an E at the front, but the two E's otherwise an Extreme. So it's the X670 Extreme with an E, Aorus Extreme not with an E, but the other two E's, and it had the master motherboards, as well as the X670 non-Extreme. This is getting ridiculous, I can't do this. We're gonna try it again. As well as the X670 non-Extreme, Aorus Pro AX, and Elite AX. We don't know if the X in AX stands for Extreme without an E or not. The flagship Aorus Extreme not with an E features an 18+2+2 phase VRM design, toolless M.2 mount, 10 gigabit per second LAN, and Wi-Fi 6E. And so far what we're seeing is a lot of I/O. So 10 gigabit per second becoming more prevalent on motherboards natively is, at least on high-end boards, is pretty good, because even though the internet providers aren't really there yet for the most part, like 99.9% of cases, internal networking obviously at 10 gigabits, anyone who works with a NAS, whether you built it yourself or you bought a 10 gigabit option off the shelf, that's where you can start making use of it. And most new construction or updated construction now is moving to 10 gigabit internal wiring. So that's where that comes in handy if you were just wondering, because internet kind of typically caps out at 1 gigabit per second where it's good, at least in the US. MSI took over after all of this with traditional, extremely weird MSI things. The company announced its one board to rule them all, showing off how up with the times it is on its references. Maybe they'll play We're Taking the Hobbits to Isengard, guard on the chipset cover or something. This is the MSI X670E Godlike. It's an MEG board, which, as a reminder, stands for MSI Enthusiast Gaming. So it's the MSI, or MicroStar International, MSI Enthusiast Gaming X670 Extreme Godlike. Please stop it, motherboard manufacturers, with the self-contained acronyms and the repetition in titles. This is so beyond ridiculous. it's not hard to keep up. It's just stupid. But at least MSI has been doing this for a little while with their naming, so that's not unexpected. The Godlike has many features. It includes 24 plus 2 phases for the VRM, so a very large voltage regulator module. It has a toolless M.2 system, and it has what MSI calls a wavy thin heatsink. That's the kind you want. Wavy. Everyone knows that. MSI also showed the MEG X670E Ace version and the MPG, which is MSI Performance Gaming X670E Carbon Wi-Fi. In a somewhat unfortunate mix-up, MSI also released a video on YouTube showing its new Ace motherboard that includes an animation of an Intel A750 IHS landing in the board's AM5 socket. Everything went well up until that, though. But maybe we just don't get it. Maybe that's part of the, quote, pinnacle of all the motherboard capabilities. And finally, BioStar. Again, just happy to have been invited. BioStar showed one motherboard. It was the X670E Valkyrie. The board is mostly understated. It doesn't have a ton of RGB, but it includes 2.5 gigabits per second LAN and a 22-phase VRM design. And going with a darker board has been something that's come back into trends lately with X670 or X570 dark and Z690 dark stuff from EVGA. Asus has done it as well, and certainly we're all for it. I mean, cutting down on some costs for LEDs, but putting that money into things that matter more is a better move than cutting all the stuff that matters and adding LEDs on the low end. So BioStar, I don't know, we might check it out, we might not. Last BioStar board we looked at was a DDR4, DDR3 split board for an older Intel CPU. Up next, NVIDIA was off target for its revenue for the upcoming quarterly reports, where they have an earnings call coming up on August 24th. NVIDIA's total revenue was down overall, and it landed at $6.7 billion, which missed its outlook of $8.1 billion for the quarter. $6.7 billion is down 19% quarter over quarter, and it's up 3% year over year. NVIDIA places blame primarily on its gaming segment, which posted a revenue of $2.04 billion. This is down 44% quarter over quarter and down 33% year over year. These weaker sales are due to what the company dubs, quote, macroeconomic headwinds. Now, really important point here is that even if NVIDIA is trying to differentiate between mining and gaming revenue in some of its reporting, it's still ultimately very difficult to actually understand which cards that were being sold through partners like retailers were going to miners versus were going to gamers. And so that's just, even if they're doing their best to properly report it this time, there was a lawsuit, you can read about it. The issue is still that it's like impossible to differentiate them. So tough to know how much that decrease in gaming revenue is actual versus just people who are buying gaming cards for other stuff. NVIDIA's partners, in turn, have been experiencing poorer sales of its products, and to combat this, NVIDIA says it is starting to work with board partners on price. CEO Jensen Huang from NVIDIA is quoted saying, "As we expect the macroeconomic conditions affecting sell-through to continue, we took actions with our gaming partners to adjust channel prices and inventory." If you saw in our coverage earlier this week, EVGA and Asus recently have had some pretty major layoffs, and a lot of that is a result of these GPU sales right now. So these actions have included aggressive price cuts. You've seen them at this point. As a reference, EVGA's 3090 Ti FTW3 and the 3090 Ti FTW3 Ultra have recently had $1,000 price cuts. So that's certainly causing some damage to the partners here. And despite the drop in gaming segment revenue, NVIDIA's data center revenue was $3.81 billion. So it's up 1% quarter over quarter and 61% year over year. Shows how much it hurts to just do sort of one thing with one major partner in the industry. Even though this is a record level of data center revenue for NVIDIA, it still falls short of the company's expectations. NVIDIA cites supply chain issues for this shortcoming. Despite missing its target for the quarter, NVIDIA does not currently have a plan to have any layoffs. Huang said via an internal memo, quote, "So what does this mean for us? Do we have a layoff? No. Instead, we have given raises to take care of your families, as all of you are facing sky-high inflation." Huang also went on to explain that the company will take this opportunity to eliminate waste and become more efficient in its work. So in this case, it's not necessarily, at least at face value, NVIDIA's employees who will be taking a hit here, but rather the partners and their employees. And of course, it all comes down to how the companies were trying to, well, at least EVGA and Asus and Corsair were trying to scale as if the demand for everything in the industry was going to be at this high infinitely, which is just either, as we said last time, either irresponsible, where you're just going to maximize on it and then you just get rid of everyone you can later on when it dips, or it's incompetent for obvious reasons because it never continues like that. So that's the news from NVIDIA. Moving on, Ryzen 7000 specs and pricing rumors. This one's pretty simple. This is a WCCF Tech, I think, exclusive from what we understand. There's 4 rumored CPUs. We've seen these particular CPUs rumored in the past. Not a big surprise. 7950X, 7700X, 7600X, and the 7900X, if I didn't already say that one. For pricing, the rumor suggests the 7950X will be $800 or higher. It suggests that the 7900X, that's a 12-core, will be $600 or higher, so that replaces the 5900X. And it suggests that the 7600X will be $230 or higher, replacing the 5600X. Now, typically, we'd assume that the 7600X would be closer to $300, just because that'd be more in line with the previous launch, but that's not what this rumor says, and 200 is closer to what that 600 series used to be anyway a few generations ago. The 7700X is allegedly priced at this $300 slot instead, and beyond that, the core count expectations are predictable, the cache scales up, and the boost goes as high as 5.7 gigahertz for some of these. Now, if we had to pick anything to doubt here in the rumors, the 5.7 gigahertz boost clock number is definitely doubt-worthy. Boost clock numbers in rumors for AMD products in the past have been wildly inaccurate at times, so we're not really sure how realistic that number is. AMD previously boasted a 5.5 gigahertz boost in its official information that it showed on early design revisions of Ryzen 7000 CPUs. It seems unlikely that they wouldn't show the best if they didn't, if they could. And in this case, 5.7 would be better than 5.5. So either there's been design iteration and improvement over the last few months, certainly possible, or the rumor's inaccurate. Either way, it's somewhere, 5.5 is confirmed from AMD, so we know that much. WCCF Tech's article does manage to stir the pot a little bit here. It claims that AMD will disallow raising the CPU voltage for overclocking, and it will only allegedly allow undervolting. Now, we aren't so sure about this one either. This is actually in direct conflict with AMD's previous statements, where AMD's own slides officially have stated support for extreme and enthusiast overclocking. That's sort of the whole reason for X670E, which will also support 2 GPUs properly by 16. So at least with regard to the overvolting not being allowed, that seems inaccurate, maybe for some CPUs and not others. But we've already seen under Alan Turing and High Cookies Lab, so probably overvoltage is allowed at least on some boards or some CPUs. All right, next one, RTX 4080 and 4070 power leaks. Are you ready? It's another number, and it's different this week than it was the last 3 months we've been talking about this. So previous rumors have painted the 40 series power draw all over the place. The most recent number that we talked about was the 800 watt one. We said in our reporting that that's probably a test board or something else. It's not really going to be a gaming card. That's ridiculous. So this time, and for the gaming stuff, we've seen as high as say 450 watts more recently. So this time, the tweet is from Copite7Kimi, who says the total graphics power will be 320 watts on the 4080 and 285 watts on the 4070. It's a lot lower. It's much more normal. This is down from the previous rumor claiming 420 watts and 300 watts, and then there was one before that. It was like 450 or 485 or something like that. And of course, the 800 watt number for obviously something else entirely. So maybe next week it'll be up to 1 million watts for the 4080. We're not sure yet. We're just going to stop reporting on the power leaks and rumors because they're getting silly. And this is probably the least consistent set of leaks and rumors we've seen in a very long time. So we'll talk about it again in one of two situations. Either we get the cards, we can test it, or we have firsthand information. So that's it for that storyline. Up next, the Intel i9-13900 was delidded recently. The Bilibili channel XP Review has posted a fun video showing a delid of what is reported to be an i9-13900 non-K CPU. And in this, they show a razor being used around the edge underneath the IHS to cut the silicone adhesive. They then left the razor underneath the IHS to provide pressure while using a heat gun on top of the IHS to liquefy the solder holding the CPU to the IHS. Though the IHS successfully came off, there was one moment. XP Review actually knocked off one of the SMDs, probably cut it off. We've done this in the past with GPUs and CPUs alike, and for the most part, they still work perfectly fine afterwards, although that wasn't implied in this video. It could have been a BIOS thing, though. Normally, if you just lose an MLCC cap or something, you lose some filtering efficiency, but you're otherwise still salvageable on the product. At the end of the video, they provide a side-by-side comparison of the 13900 next to some mock-ups of other CPUs that have been out recently, like the 11900 and the 12900K. And here we see the physically larger die of Raptor Lake next to the older dies, and the Raptor Lake 1 XP Review measured at, they say, 22.8 by 10.8 millimeters. Up next, AMD has finally released its line of Threadripper Pro 5000 CPUs, codenamed Chagall Pro, as individual components for the DIY market. This generation's Threadripper launch has been strange. It started with availability through Lenovo in March of this year, and then Dell followed that. And the new-ish lineup features CPUs ranging from the $6,500 5995WX that has 64 cores and 256 megabytes of L3 cache, down to the currently not priced 5945WX with 12 cores and 64 megabytes of L3 cache. Features shared between all 5 of the Threadripper Pro 5000 CPUs include a 280-watt TDP, 4.5 gigahertz boost clock, and 128 lanes of PCIe Gen 4 connectivity. Aside from price, of course, the thing that really separates these from the 16-core Ryzen CPUs is lane count. It's been true ever since AMD knocked the lane count down on its highest-end desktop CPUs, and now you have to go to Threadripper for that. So that's where that really stands apart, and it just makes it a workstation CPU, not really as meant for enthusiasts as some of the earlier Threadripper parts, although certainly you could buy it. It's just you'll get the most use if you're a developer, a 3D artist, home lab maybe, or using Adobe Premiere or something. That's it for news this week. Thanks for watching. As always, go to store.gamersaccess.net if you want to support us directly by grabbing a mod mat where you will be getting a 7-year warranty. And if you already have one, you've got the retroactive warranty applied to it. Feel free to hit up support at gamersnexus.net. And you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus, as always, where we've posted a couple of written updates recently for some behind-the-scenes stuff and paradigm shifts we've had internally that have really, I think, advanced our content, our reporting. I'm enjoying the content a lot lately. So genuinely, thank you to everyone for supporting us in letting us do what we want to do. We appreciate it. We'll see you all next time.